Nothing about this was promised. The setbacks, the doubt, the nights nobody saw. I stopped asking why and started moving forward. Because when you don't quit, life eventually shows you the reason. Every hit I took, every roadblock in my way was all leading here. Fenway behind me, the city watching. This isn't luck, this is destiny. I'm headlining the most historic card in New England combat sports history on February 21st. Cage Titans Revolution, MGM Boston, February 21st. Are you ready to be entertained?
Monotony. It comes in all shapes and sizes. Dull, tedious, just plain boring. But what is this? A contender, perhaps? Something unboring by the looks of it. Jabs right at dull, an uppercut to tedium, something that keeps you on your toes, keeps your head on a swivel, a knockout punch to your old, boring workouts. Welcome to Fight Camp.
What up, everybody? Kevin Jackson here. If you feel the need and you want to get in touch with the hot topics from today's headlines, you got to check out The Booth with Keith Sinista1 Hayes. Tell him Kevin Jackson sent you.
The movie, music, news, television promos, trailers and videos used in this production are protected by the Fair Use Act. Section 107 of the Copyright Act. 1. The purpose and character of the use, including whether such use is of commercial nature or is for nonprofit educational purposes. 2. The nature of the copyrighted work. 3. The amount and substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole. 4. The effect of the use upon the potential market for, or value of, the copyrighted work.
Greetings, fellow patriot. Thinking about applying for a job with ICE? Let's get you prepared before your big interview. Practice zip tying children. Try it on your own kids. Ask them to shake and scream for authenticity. Learn to wear a mask. Study videos of narco-terrorists for inspiration. Build your confidence by beating up women. Ask your sister or your mom if you can rough her up. Don't worry, it gets easier with practice. Practice taking down inflatable frogs. They're big and slippery. Learn to recognize Hispanics. Don't be fooled by a good tan. Know your racial ID signs. Eat a lot. ICE loves a big boy. Size intimidates. If you are a proud boy, don't worry, your resume is already approved. If not, ask a friend from your favorite hate group to vouch for you. And finally, but most importantly, get a good lawyer. You're going to need one. This public service was brought to you by the Lincoln Project.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
This is blasphemy! This is madness! This is the booth! Broadcasting from the City of Champions, Brockton, Massachusetts, with your host, Keith Sinista1 Hayes.
All right, it's your boy Sinista1 broadcasting live from the City of Champions. You are watching The Booth. It is 2026, January 13th. We are a week off. I had some computer issues that I wanted to take care of, and I wanted to do it right, so that's why we weren't on last week. We were scheduled to actually be on last week, but I moved these guys to this week. So I'm going to let them say their hellos and Happy New Year's first before I get into my sponsors. We'll start with Ken Diesenhof down below.
Happy New Year to all of our listeners, all 12 of you. Hope everyone made it through the Christmas, New Year's season safely. And, well, we're lock, cock, ready to rock. Let's do it.
Rob Resnick up in the upper left-hand corner.
Yes, hello, everybody. Let's get started, man. I'm wasting time.
Michael Douglas Barrett, MDB Electronics, still a sponsor for 2026. Vianna Marie, music streaming everywhere. Get that in now. Tactical Target Systems, those targets that you see, support tacticaltargetsystems.com. I Love Boston Sports. Make sure to check them out in South Shore Plaza, 2 locations. Kimberly Ann Empowerment Photography. Underwatch Protective Services, black-owned business. Make sure to support Daryl Smith. And then my buddy Carl Larry, Handyman Services, 774-826-6549. And before we get into the news booth, this topic is still out there. Turn him in. Davinci Leonard, responsible for 2 murders. He's yet to be caught, but there has been an update. The rumor is that he is in Haiti. So now this has become a federal issue, which is why they've upgraded this wanted poster, and now the feds are involved. Ken's a defense attorney. I'm going to ask Ken this question real quick. So what happens here when they get the word that somebody might have gone out of the country after committing a couple of murders, and now we see this upgraded wanted sheet with the U.S. Marshals? It's now in the hands of the U.S. Marshals. It's no longer in the hands of the state and the Brockton Police Department. So what happens?
Well, it's very simple. Once he crossed state line, he falls in the purview of the U.S. Marshals, because then you got a federal issue. If it's international, we have cooperative agreements with other countries' police departments. Haiti is one of them. So we will send our people there to see if we can find him. Our people will not make the arrest. The local police departments will make the arrest and then extradite him to the United States pursuant to a treaty. But we have a lot of cooperative agreements, especially in the Caribbean, with with the FBI and the U.S. Marshal Services for hunting fugitives. So, wouldn't want to be this guy. That's all I can say.
So there is an updated reward. I believe the reward is, I want to say, is up to 7,000 for him. So I just want to get this up on the screen here so everybody can see this. Turn him in. The reward is up to $7,500. There's the picture of him. If you have any tips, that's the number there, or you can scan the QR code. And again, this is under the U.S. Marshals because the rumor is that he is now fled to Haiti. So that's what we'll give you guys here and give you that information in the news booth. Also in the news booth, Brockton this week swore in the new mayor, Mayor Rodrigues. Congratulations to Moises Rodrigues. We also sworn in other members of politics in the city, but biggest one of all is the school committee unanimously voted in Claudio Gomes to the vice chair. As you guys remember, all last year they were gridlocked, couldn't get the vote in. They had their vote, unanimous decision, Claudio Gomes, so congrats to him. And there is Moises Rodrigues being sworn in. So we're going to see. I actually spoke with him. He's going to be coming on the booth. Also in the news booth, Massachusetts begins eminent domain proceedings. Down on the Cape, they're collecting houses near the bridges. Fair market value is what they must buy, is what the state has to purchase these houses for. So it looks like years and years of rumors of the bridges being replaced is now come to truth, because they're now taking houses by eminent domain. If it's a state project such as this, guys, eminent domain, you can't hold out like you would a private investor, right? For more money, like if a Home Depot wanted your property.
Well, what you can do, will happen is, if you're talking about two different things, can you hold out for more money? Yes. Will that stop them from taking the property? No. What happens is you can go to Superior Court and say the fair market value of my property is X. They offered me Y, and the court will decide. Generally speaking, courts will defer to the administrative agency. Those are very hard cases to win. Because most of the time in Massachusetts, what they do is they go out and get 3 appraisals and take the middle one.
Gotcha. Got ya. Well,
now,
I mean,
that wasn't always true. In the old days, they would give you $1 and say, go fight us for 20 years. But that has changed.
Right. Well, I mean, these houses are down the Cape. They're along the bridge. I've got to say they're definitely fair market value. If it's someone that's lived there for years, they're definitely going to get more than their money's worth. So, it sucks that you got, because they're giving them 120 days to move once they cut the check. Right. So, it's tough.
But that's the problem. What if you lived there all your entire life?
Uh-huh.
A lot of these people live there for 20, 30, 40 years.
Well, we'll see. I'm glad to see that this is finally moving. Also in the news booth, the marijuana industry here in Massachusetts, record profits once again. They're saying despite the falling prices. Well, marijuana dispensaries are run like market value, like the stock market. So when the prices are low, you're going to see higher buying for that. So again, let's see where this money goes. That's the problem we had here in Brockton. They made so much money that they had to create a different fund, and people still have yet to know where this money is going and where it's being used. It's a serious windfall. Also in the news booth, in Everett, there was a car crash, 10 people displaced. It's another reason why some people don't like these speed bumps in thickly settled neighborhoods. When people are flying, the speed bumps are to slow them down, but this person was going so fast that it sent them airborne, and he went into 2 different houses, so luckily he wasn't killed. Also in the entertainment booth, they announced Godzilla sequel Zero. Godzilla Minus Zero will be released in Japan November 3rd on Godzilla Day, November 6th here in the US. And I've been talking about going to see Godzilla in Japan now for 11/6. So I don't know. I got to see what I got to do. Also in the sports booth. Patriots beat the Chargers 16-3. Texans are up next. Sunday the 3 I think it's 3 p.m. start. They'll take on the Texans. Patriots are pretty much playing with house money, guys. They had a good schedule in their favor. We talked about this early on. You know, they won the games they needed to win, and they won them soundly. I'm liking the Texans. The Patriots have proved this weekend, all season, that any given Sunday, if you play mistake-free football, you can win this game. You can win this game for any team this year. Again, let's go around the horn because we've got the playoff games coming up. Who you guys like? I'm going to start with Ken down in the bottom right.
I'm liking the Patriots over the Texans. I saw the Texans Steelers game. Great game, by the way. But frankly, Pittsburgh had the game until the fourth quarter, and they just fell apart. I think the Texans' offense isn't that great. Their defense is good, but not great. The Patriots' defense, the only reason they won that game was the Patriots' defense just stepped up and had a game to end all games. I doubt very much they're going to have that kind of game against the Texans, but even if they have half the game, I'm going with the Patriots.
Well,
it will be bloody.
Milton Williams coming back off an injury was a big key to that pass rush. That was big. R-Squared, your thoughts?
Well, Houston's had the best defense in the league this season, and they really came on strong to make a playoff run. It's very difficult to pick against them, but this is going to be a very difficult road game for them. And so I think it all comes down to whether Houston can maintain its composure. Obviously, the Patriots' offense, Drake May was a little nervous going into that game. Thankfully for the Patriots, the Chargers, I think they were still in Los Angeles. I don't think they ever came to Massachusetts. I mean, that was one of the worst performances I've ever seen in a playoff game. Their defense was good, frustrated the Patriots, but their offense didn't show up. And I know Herbert was playing hurt, but still, I mean, that was pathetic. So, the Patriots won the game. They got the job done. Good for them. I right now it's pick'em to me. I haven't really taken a close enough look at it after last night's game. I like you guys always say, obviously anybody could win. It's just a question of who wins on that given day. I think it's going to be a very close game, and I think anybody could win it. And I've got to take a closer look at it to give you more.
And breaking down some of the other games real quickly. Who else do you like this weekend, Rob?
The game that intrigues me, I think, is going to be the Rams at Seattle because of the division rivalry. It's very difficult to play somebody 3 times. And, the Rams really disappointed. They were the number 1 seed with a couple of weeks left in the season, and they crapped out. And so the question is, they got the job done last time. Good for them. That was a tough win at Carolina. Carolina playing at home, tough conditions. But the Rams didn't look great. So I guess I got to give it to Seattle. I don't know. But that's the game to watch to me, because which Rams team is going to show up? Right.
Ken, your pick that you're looking forward to this weekend?
The game are we talking about? The game I'm looking forward to this weekend definitely is going to be Buffalo at Denver. That's going to be an exciting game. That's going to be fantastic. Josh Allen, I don't know how he's got a horseshoe shoved up his rear. That's all I can say. He's playing hurt, but he's playing great. I do not think the Bills are going to be able to take it. They're going into Denver. Playing in Denver is always difficult because of the thin air, and Denver's been on fire. So I'm going with Denver, but it will not be a blowout. I'm really looking forward to that game. I think it's going to be very close, but I'm going with Denver. As to the Seattle Rams game, I think Seattle's going to crush the Rams. They've been falling apart all season. They barely got through. Seattle's a tough team to play at home on the best circumstances, and this is not the best circumstances. So I really think that's going to be Seattle's going to crush them.
Yeah, Seattle was super under the radar this year. I like Seattle. I think they're super under the radar. I think they take this game. I'm curious with this Niners-Bears game because Niners were still able to win their game after losing George Kittle in a nasty season-ending injury. They're banged up, but yet Saleh, who I really like as a defensive coordinator, he continues to get it done. I think the Niners can beat this Chicago Bears team. I think they can beat it. I'm looking forward to the Niners as my surprise pick to extend their distance in this playoff run. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I would say on the other games, first of all, I think, again, any team can win. I think it is going to be an easy win for Denver. I don't think it's going to be that close. I think Josh Allen is not going to be able to play well. I think that injury to his hand, it was numb. He was able to get through it, but after a week of letting it sit like that, and some of the other problems that the Bills, I remember the Bills they were supposed to run away with the division this year. They barely made the playoffs. So
right.
I don't think the Bills can go to Denver on their best day this year and give them a game. I just don't. The Bills have been probably the most disappointing team in the NFL this year, as far as playoff teams. Obviously, the Giants were the most disappointing team, but the Bills were probably the most disappointing of the playoff teams. And I don't know. Chicago, they had that great comeback against the Packers, but how did they fall that far behind at home? I don't know what's going to happen in that game. That's going to be a crazy one to watch, I think. I think the rest of the games will be, kind of going as scheduled. But, I don't know what to say about Chicago. I thought they were going to be a pretty dominant playoff team, but I'm not so sure. And San Francisco without Kittle, Purdy gets it done. I mean, I give him credit. They have a great team. You got McCaffrey, a decent defense out there. I think that's going to be a decent game. I don't know. Can you go to Chicago and win in January? We'll see.
Yeah. Look, that's my toss-up game because, I didn't think San Francisco was going to get into the playoffs, much less go to the divisional round. So they've been proving everybody wrong. Chicago, if I may borrow a phrase from Rob, is what Chicago team's going to show up. They've been incredibly inconsistent all year long. They beat the Packers, but they had to come from behind. They are playing at home, which is a big advantage to them. But San Francisco plays in a cold stadium. Remember, San Francisco is not a warm stadium to play in on the best days. Honestly, if you told me that both teams lost, I wouldn't be surprised. I know that can't happen, but that's the way I look at it. So flip a coin and then tell me which team wins.
So, we also talked about teams that didn't make it, but yesterday was Black Monday in the NFL, and, Mike Tomlin, gone, stepped down. I'm pretty sure he was probably going to be fired, but they let him get out of there with some dignity, so he stepped down. John Harbaugh, surprisingly, was let go by the Ravens. I don't like coaches being let go when you have a season of injuries. Maybe it comes down.
Harbaugh was on his way out. Short of him winning a Super Bowl, he was gone. He really blotted his copybook. He was having problems in the locker room. He was having problems with the front office. He was gone, absent winning a Super Bowl. And I think it's wrong because I think he's a great coach. And I think the Baltimore screwed up, but that's my humble opinion.
And we got Mike McDaniels, Miami Dolphins. They just can't seem to get it right down there in Miami. They thought they had it with Mike, but there are some things that Mike had mishandled in this time. He mishandled the Tua concussion situation. If you guys remember, we talked about this on the show. He mishandled that one. Tua went back out there, almost could have had his career ruined by suffering 2 concussions in one season. We talked about players, coaches being successful, yet at the end of the day, it comes down to they're not. We've seen this time and time again. But Mike McDaniel is gone. They're saying that Mike Tomlin could be the replacement for Harbaugh in Baltimore, but I have a feeling that he might be going to the announcer's booth. The booth is paying these guys a lot since Brady got in and since what's his name got re-signed. The money for announcers who have knowledge of the sport has tripled in the last few years. So for a guy like Tomlin, who's been in the league forever coaching, now an announcing job is money now. It's so you kind of say, hey, you got some guys over there on Fox that I watched that they're great guys. Don't get me wrong over there at Fox, but their ages are showing. Terry Bradshaw, every week when I tune in, Terry Bradshaw's age shows, and there's some slip up. There's things that go on. I could see Mike Tomlin stepping into that seat, or things of that sort. So your thoughts, guys, on the firings that have happened and the stepping down of Mike Tomlin. I'll let you go first, Ken.
Well, Tomlin has been on thin ice for the last 10 years. The fact that he lasted this long is a miracle. He's not a very good clock manager. I don't think he managed the egos of his team very well, but he's still a good head coach. Don't misunderstand me. It's just, but the fact that he lasted this long is a miracle. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the announcer's booth. What has he got left to prove? I mean, why would he want to want the headache of another head coaching job? He can't be hungry for money. He was one of the most winningest coaches in Pittsburgh history, although he didn't win a lot, Super Bowl issues. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he winds up in the announcer's booth or doing an analysis position for ESPN or something like that. As for Harbaugh, like I said before, again, his days were numbered. He was getting fired this year. I wouldn't be surprised to see him someplace else. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in Miami, actually. I think he'd be a good fit in Miami.
Sure. Your thoughts, Squid?
Yeah, I'm not going to go through each coach because we'll be here all night and it's not worth it. But I would say none of the firings really surprised me. I didn't think any of the coaches should have stuck around. I'm surprised about Harbaugh, but here's what happened in Baltimore was they lost the fans. The players liked Harbaugh and he's a good coach. The fans were restless and justified or not justified. It was the reality that he lost the support of the fans. The fans put pressure and the owners kowtowed to it. Whether that's the right way to do business or not, that's for another debate. But that's what happened there. And the good news for Harbaugh is he's probably going to be the most sought after of any of the available coaches right now. A lot of people said that he had already signed with Miami. I don't think that's the case. I think that was premature. That Miami's going to make a great offer to him and try to get him there. A lot of people also think he'd be great with the Giants because he's got a young quarterback in Jackson Dart. He's got the type of young team that he wants. That's how he started in Baltimore. And I think he would actually be a great fit for the Giants, for him and for the team. I'm hoping that the Giants can make him an offer he can't refuse. And I'd like to see that work out for him because I do think he's a good coach. I think, he's not a perfect coach, but of the people available that I can think of, I think he'd be the best fit and the best for that team. Miami, I'm not sure who they're going to get because that team is a mess. Nobody wants to go to a mess unless you see a path to victory. And they're a year or two out from that mess. So I'm not really sure about that. And again, we can go through every team. It's, good luck to everybody.
Yeah, it's a tough one. So moving on, let's get into, here we go. This is where we're really going to get into some things here. We are getting into the legal booth. And in the legal booth, the holiday break recap. We weren't here for 2 weeks. I got to say hello to some people in the chat. Felicia, what's going on? Andrea, what's going on? Travis Partington, Mark Lopes, what's going on? All you guys in the chat watching the show. We weren't here for 2 weeks, and neither was the Senate and Congress. They were also on their holiday break. And during the holiday break, this whole Venezuelan thing came first and foremost to the forefront. We had been saying on this show for months that the reason behind the narco-terrorist false narrative was over oil and shipping lanes. And, we talked about this on the show. And then sure enough, when we take the break, we go on the break. And the first thing that happens is that the NDA, the ODNI and the DEA released their threat assessment reports. And in their threat assessment reports, they cover the threats around the world for drugs. In Venezuela, of course, isn't even on the list, isn't even in the top 5. So it smashes that whole narrative round. So we try to wonder, and we have these 2 weeks off, and then New Year's comes, and guess what happens? You wake up to the story of we've invaded Venezuela and we've taken Maduro. Now, all of us here on this show can agree that Maduro is a shitbag. He lost his election but didn't give up his seat. We know all that. We get all of that. The issue here is that the Senate and Congress was on holiday break. They weren't resuming until January. Trump goes in and they secure Maduro. The problem here is that they have all these stories as to why they went in, why they grabbed him up, why they snatched him up. Yet you left 2 other people who were on the bounty. 2 other people who were on that very same bounty were left in power there. So it kind of messed that up. There were some things there that were unveiled that I think we should have kept secret. The White House was showing off I forget the name of the plane. It's a spy plane that was used that now that we've seen it, this spy plane has been seen in a ton of videos all around, and people were talking about UFOs and stuff like this. It is actually a spy plane that we used. It was over Venezuela before the guys dropped in there. There were some sonic weapons that were used for the first time that caused people to bleed from their nose, their ears, and spit up blood. I forget what country it is now, but they were saying that Cuba, they had people there that was hired to do security. They were killed. Supposedly when the U.S. forces came in there, they pretty much killed everybody that was on the ground. So Osquith is a retired U.S. Army colonel / JAG officer. And, the biggest thing that was upsetting people, and you saw when watching C-SPAN, was the fact that he did not confer with Congress or the Senate to go in. Now, people were saying, well, he doesn't have to. It's a police action. He can do whatever he wants. My opinion is after what has happened this week with Congress and the Senate and them saying, hey, we're limiting your war powers in Venezuela, lets me know that he effed up. And I'm going to let you just talk about this because this was heated, debated all over the place. Senator Mark Kelly was really chiming in on this. Thankfully, there was no loss of American life going in there. But, at the end of the day, as soon as we get in and as soon as Maduro's out, guess what? The whole narrative about narco-terrorism goes out the window. And right away, Trump is talking about, guess what? Oil. And he admits that he's talked to oil companies about taking over the Venezuelan oil plants to run those in that operation, which we all know is the #1 operation in the world when it comes to oil, which you've talked about, Osquith, on this show. You mentioned this very early on. So your thoughts on what has gone down from a military perspective, and your thoughts on, was this strategic, the fact that he went in there while the Senate and everybody was on break? Because I think if he knew he had to ask, he wasn't going to get it.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think, first of all, this is an extremely complex issue with different layers of different things going on. And so there's not one simple answer or one way to look at it. There are different things at play. First of all, this particular operation, as they said, was very weather dependent. They were looking at doing it for a period of months, and they were waiting for the right weather conditions as far as moonlight, as far as ambient light, as far as cloud cover. These things are complicated, and that's normal for mission planning. A lot of times that, you have, a well-planned mission and you can't execute it because of external factors that you can't control, like bad weather, whether it's winds or cloud or something like that. And so that doesn't work in their favor, because what it shows is that they were planning to do this for a long time. And because they had the mission ready to go with Trump's approval, Hegseth's approval, and they had to, scrub it a few times, or at least wait for an opportunity. What that tells you is that they did have the opportunity, if they wanted to brief the Gang of Eight. which is what the law requires, is to brief the leadership of Congress. Now, there are exceptions to that. There are some times when you have an imminent threat or a timing that's critical where the law says you can brief them. If you can't do it in advance, you do it immediately thereafter. And you give them the details then, and then Congress can weigh in. And that's what Congress did in this particular case. They were briefed 2 to 3 days later when it was public anyway. It didn't have to be briefed. And then Congress reacted to it by saying, we're not so sure that we're comfortable with a prolonged involvement in Venezuela. Now, whether the administration was planning to be, involved in Venezuela, in a prolonged military sense anyway, who knows, because they were able to get in and do their thing pretty quickly. Now, what's interesting about that is another thing. So we'll put that issue aside, the War Powers Act issue about briefing Congress. They should have done it. I'm sorry. One other thing is they were talking to the oil company executives for months about the mission. Right. And if you could talk to the oil company executives, you sure as hell could talk to the Gang of Eight. And one of the excuses that Trump and Hegseth gave was leaks. Well, there has not been a leak. Somebody show me that from the Gang of Eight in a War Powers briefing in the history, the decades of this legislation. I could not find a single leak from any administration, any iteration of Congress of the Gang of Eight in a War Powers issue. There may be some occasional leaks in Congress, I get it, regardless of administration, but not when it comes to the War Powers Act and the Gang of Eight. They take that responsibility pretty damn seriously. And so the idea that they didn't tell them because of leaking doesn't fly. Now, the mission itself. If I wanted to, as a lawyer, you have to look at both sides and make your best argument and what have you. I could make an argument for the legality or the propriety of that mission. Now, that doesn't matter, because if I would do that under the facts and under an objective way, when Trump and Hegseth and the rest of the clown show gave their briefing the next day, or I should say later that day, New Year's morning, when we all became aware of this a couple of hours later, I watched that entire news conference. It went on for a while. And having watched that, I no longer can make the argument that there was a legitimate purpose behind the mission, because they took away all those possible issues, right? You could talk about how Maduro, first of all, Maduro was never elected in the first place. Mm-hmm. And he lost the election, and he was committing human rights atrocities. And those are reasons under international law to intervene. But that wasn't what we were doing. So we take that off the plate. It doesn't matter that we could make that argument, because that's not what the administration was doing. And we know that by their own words. Was there an imminent threat against the United States? No, there was not. And so that comes off. And so, objectively, you could make an argument, but that's not what the administration was doing. In their own words, as the American people well heard from that, from the briefing by the administration. So we're not talking about commentary or anything else. It's from the administration's own words. They said they wanted to go in and take control of the oil. And Venezuela, they were literally going to take control of it, not free it from a dictator. They were going to go in and take control of it and take it and sell it and keep the proceeds, supposedly some for the people of Venezuela and some for American oil and some for what have you. Well, that is not a legitimate reason for the operation. That it's simply not. And so, people may like it, but it's not a lawful purpose. And so they shoot themselves in the foot, so to speak, because they took away any possible argument to do that. We do not have the authority under any analysis to take the Venezuelan oil or resources. And we don't have the ability to compel them what to do with their resources. We can try to influence those decisions with, economic incentives and other ways that we influence countries around the world, but we don't have the ability to go in and do it by force. Now, the other thing is they say, oh, well, Maduro was such a bad guy, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, then why did you leave the vice president in power? Because the vice president is the continuation of Maduro. And by the way, it's not even her. She doesn't seem like she's that bad necessarily. I think she was a figurehead with him, although she is very much part of that regime and doesn't belong in power. The interior minister is the one that's the problem. The interior minister next to Maduro was the one, in fact, even with Maduro there, was probably the most powerful person in the country. He's the one with the secret police. He's the one that was brutalizing and violating the human rights of the Venezuelan people, and not to mention others, and working with the drug cartels and everything else. They left him in power. And so with the vice president being sworn in officially as the new president, the interior minister is the one who's really running the country. And he may have been doing it with Maduro too. And so you can't make any argument that this was about getting rid of Maduro. And you can't make any argument that this was about the narco trafficking, because he's the guy that's doing it and he's the one basically in charge. So if you take the administration's own statements at face value, they gave you all the reasons why they were wrong.
Right.
And so again, at the end of the day, I when I first woke up that morning, and I wake up pretty damn early, so it was well before the commentary, I said, wow, this is pretty good. I was kind of in favor of it. I actually thought this was a good thing. And then I heard the administration talk about it. I said, well, now I can't even make an argument. I can't even make a straight-faced argument why it might be a good thing. I'm not saying it was an easy decision. I'm saying I could make the argument. That's your job. Ken knows this as a lawyer. You have to make arguments for your side, for your client. And if I was asked to make an argument, could there be a way to remove Maduro? I could have made a legal argument why they could do it, but not for the reasons that they gave the American public in a 2 hours long briefing and in multiple statements ever since. They took away any legitimacy of the operation. So at the end of the day, I'm glad he's gone, but we didn't make the situation any better for Venezuela. And now, if you look at the White House's own, the website and everything, they actually are listing Donald Trump as like the de facto president of Venezuela.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really embarrassing, quite frankly. It's really beyond embarrassing if the White House is putting this in as, Donald Trump is in charge of the United States and Venezuela, and soon I guess to be Iran. I don't know. And all these other things, and how, he keeps saying, oh, no, we're in charge. And Secretary Rubio is running the country with Secretary Hegseth. No, they're not. They're the first ones. No, we're not. No, we're not. No, we're not. And Trump's like, yes, you are. Yes, you are. I mean, it's a clown show, people. We can't be operating this way. Our foreign policy is way too important around the world, and certainly to our own people. Our military practices, you can't be fooling around like this. This goes to Trump's competence. It goes to the fact that he's never tried to understand international law. He's never tried to understand national security, and he doesn't. He's never tried to understand military policy, and he doesn't. One of the things that this is related to, and I don't mean to go on, I'll stop in a second.
No, keep going. No, because you know what you're talking about. Nope, go ahead.
But no, I want to make one other point, and then we can, you guys speak up and we'll come back to this. But, recently, right around the same time, like a month or so ago, they issued through the Department of Defense the latest national security strategy. You remember that coming out? It was in the news a little bit. And that's a normal document, right? The people in the Pentagon, you have strategic planners and others who, through the interagency process, come up with a national security strategy. They come up with a military strategy. There's all these different strategies that the professional thinkers come up with on regular basis. So this is nothing new. What's new about this is that it actually doesn't address our national security. It's a purely ideological and political document. Normally, when you look at it, it's really not something that's political or ideological. It really is based on the best estimates and assessment of our national security interests at the moment and in the near future, at home, in our region, around the world, who are our most critical threats, things like that. And whether you're a Democratic or Republican administration, these are pretty serious documents, and they're pretty credible documents. You don't have to agree with everything that's in them, because people are going to disagree. In fact, people in that room disagree, and they get outvoted about what goes in there. But at the end of the day, those are serious documents. This, for the first time that I can think of, certainly in recent history, and in any of the administrations, Republican, Democrat, going back for decades, this was the first time it wasn't a serious document. It was laughable. It was embarrassing. You could read part of it. Obviously, there are classified bits of it, but you can go see what's in it, and it doesn't read like a national security document. And of course, they talk about Venezuela, and you can see basically the national security strategy that they released a few months ago was basically an offshoot of Project 2025. It had the same credibility. Just like Project 2025 as a blueprint for governance, which of course it's not. It's anything but governance, right? But this was the Project 2025 equivalent of a national security strategy. And so this all kind of flows together into this big plan. These things are not haphazard acts. These things are planned out, which is even worse. Now, they're not planned out well, mind you. I mean, it's a clown show, but they don't care. See, the point is they're not accountable. And they don't care if they're legitimate. And they don't care if there's legal arguments. And they don't care if they're strategic arguments, because they're going to do whatever the heck they want, because they've never been held accountable. Trump's never been held accountable his whole life. He's been immune from whatever. The only time he's been held accountable in his life is when his parents sent him away to military school because his family couldn't stand him. And, he went to a boarding school because his siblings couldn't stand having him in the house. I think he was abusive of them. And so, because if you read the, the family stuff that's been written about him over the years, there was a problem in that household, and it was Donald Trump. That was the problem.
Right.
And so, this guy has problems. That's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to pick on him. I'm saying he has real problems. And the people around him are enabling him instead of trying to address it. And it's a shame, because the country's paying a serious price. So at the end of the day, buy Maduro, rotten hell. But, we didn't do ourselves any favors by a ridiculous attempt to justify it.
Yeah, like I said, we all saw this movie before with Iraq and Afghanistan, and we spent years there. It was the same thing. It came right down to me predicting that this guy was going to classify fentanyl as WMDs, and he did do that, and that was one of their other steps. Go ahead, Squid, I see your finger.
I'm sorry, there was one other critical point that you asked me about. I want to cover this, and then I'll stop.
Yep.
One of the things the administration tried to say is that this was a law enforcement operation. Remember that BS?
Yes. Yep.
That there's no such thing. Okay, let me tell you something. And anybody here, I know we have veterans who listen to the show, and I think you guys would have seen the same thing. It is not uncommon. In fact, when you have special forces missions, it's very common to have law enforcement personnel, whether they're from the FBI or a similar organization, to accompany on those missions. We do that. So they were trying to say, oh, well, this was an FBI thing to take Maduro into custody because of the warrant for his arrest and to stand trial on the indictment that he had. So this was really, we were helping the Department of Justice on a law enforcement mission. No. The Department of Justice oftentimes sends FBI agents with our special forces teams. They're military missions, and the FBI agents are there to advise the military members on proper collection of evidence and other applicable issues, so they can preserve the ability to make the prosecution if that's in fact what they're trying to do, to collect evidence, to know what to collect, whether it's physical evidence, statements, making an arrest, those type of things. And so that does not make this from a military to a law enforcement. It's still a military operation, and we regularly have FBI and other law enforcement agents, DEA or otherwise, with the military to provide legal advice on the aspect of the case.
And Ken, you had brought up a point on that. We were off air during the 2 weeks, and Ken, you had brought up something too. You had said that if this was a law enforcement thing, then why did we shut down airspace and shut down radar capabilities? You said, Ken, right off the bat, you said that's all military stuff. That's not a law enforcement operation. As a defense attorney, you said that's bullshit.
Yes,
Much, right?
That's absolute BS. But if I may continue on Rob's point, first of all, the initial justification that's disappeared about 30 seconds was it was a law enforcement operation, that there was an indictment, and they were just collecting him. A couple of things. Number one, Maduro is a piece of crap. And if he died tomorrow, I wouldn't be sitting Shiva for him. Okay? But he's still a citizen of a foreign sovereign nation. If you want to get someone in the United States to face charges, you have there are extradition treaties. Okay? You go to the country, you said, please extradite him, bring him to the United States. Here's the problem. I read the indictment, okay, because I'm a geek and I'm pathetic and I have no life.
Me too.
Yeah. Here's the problem with the indictment. The indictment, first of all, came down 6 years ago, and it's very important. Talks about actions Maduro took as president or an office holder of Venezuela, okay? Here's the problem. The Supreme Court, when Trump was in office, says the president is immune from prosecution. But if you read the decision, it doesn't say president of the United States. It simply says president of any sovereign nation. Therefore, the Supreme Court has basically said Maduro has immunity from prosecution, according to the Supreme Court case. Take that what you want. This was not a law enforcement operation. The United States military doesn't do law enforcement operations. They do military things. That's what we have them there for, and they're very good at it. Okay? if you're doing regime change, as Rob pointed out, why did you leave the vice president and the interior ministry there? And if you're really worried about this man oppressing his people, which he did, why aren't we going after MBS in Saudi Arabia or Putin in Russia or the Chinese CCP? They make Venezuela look like a socialist love it compared. So this is just crap. What is interesting is, I don't know if you saw Trump's little, oh God, I don't know what to call it. He brought a number of oil companies in for a powwow at the White House.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they all told him they don't want anything to do with Venezuela because the country's a mess. The oil industry's a mess. They'll take too much money.
There's no profit. There's no profit in there. And they tried to woo them by telling them that, and this is where they were stupid, because it got out to the public. They wooed them by trying to tell them, well, you don't have to bring the profits you make here. You can put that money in offshore accounts. Right. And that's illegal. And if these oil companies went in there and ran that and put the money in offshore accounts to disperse, it's illegal.
Right. This was all about getting rid of Maduro because Trump and his cronies wanted a deal, and Maduro wouldn't give it to them. So that's the story.
So from a military perspective, I got to go back to Rob on this. What if they did this because they knew Putin was selling oil, bringing oil into Venezuela for them to sell because of the could this have been done to stick it to Putin oil-wise?
Well, here's the thing. First of all, let me add one thing to what we were just talking about. Remember, Trump just pardoned the leader of Honduras for $480 million drug trafficking. Remember that pardon from a couple of months ago? So you can't say this has anything to do with narco trafficking, because he just pardoned the biggest narco trafficker that we went to all the trouble to build a case against him, and he was extradited properly, and he stood trial. He had a fair trial. If you read it, there's nothing wrong with the trial. He was properly convicted and sentenced, and Trump pardoned him for no reason. Obviously, he's trying to do business with him. We know why Trump pardoned him. It's about money, and it's about he got money for it. And so you can't make that argument. Now, one of the arguments I could have made about this operation was the fact that nations around the world have the ability, if not the responsibility, to enforce, properly imposed sanctions. And there were sanctions against Venezuela because of the regime and its human rights violations and its support of terrorism. Remember this, Venezuela looks like it's just this little quiet country in South America because most Americans don't study this area, this stuff. But Venezuela, through Maduro and Chavez before him, were supporting terrorist groups all over the world. And they were selling oil illegally, sanctioned oil, to basically to provide money to those. So you could have made the argument that this was about stopping them from illegally selling oil and dealing with, drug dealers, terrorists and what have you. You could have made that argument. But again, they didn't make that argument, and they quickly lost any chance to make that argument when they said that this was simply about oil and making deals and everything else. So your answer, about that is, Venezuela, remember, China needs a lot of oil. China's a big country with a lot of industry. They have heavy pollution. They haven't modernized their industry. They use a lot of oil. And so China was making all kinds of deals in Venezuela. That's why we did this. We did this to get rid of China's influence in Venezuela, because China was buying all of Venezuela's oil. Trump says we're going to send the American oil companies in there because we want them to extract the oil and refine it and sell it and all that. Well, the Chinese oil companies have been there for years doing it. The Chinese oil companies are saying, excuse me, we're already here doing it. What do you mean you're going to? What was Exxon and Chevron and all them supposed to do? Go fight the Chinese for control of the oil fields? I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous. And so when you say, is this about Putin? No, it's not about Putin per se, but this was to say, you guys can't have Venezuelan oil because Russia wants obviously to get rid, work around their sanctions. China buys everything that Russia has to sell. China buys from, Iran. China will buy from anybody. They don't support any of the sanctions. And that's why the U.S. was seizing some of the oil tankers, which, by the way, that is not illegal. the oil tanker issues. We can talk about that later. But if you can identify, if you can develop probable cause and get a warrant that these tankers were involved in illegal oil shipments in violation of sanctions, you can do what we've been doing there. That part is okay. The rest of it is a joke.
Anything you want to add to that, Ken?
Yeah, going on the issue of sanctions and supporting international terror groups, there are ways to get rid of regimes that don't play ball through the international community. There's something called the Organization of American States, or OAS, and that's a collection which the United States is a part of all of the countries south of the border. Okay, and it was set up, to basically think of as a mini UN. It was the UN for the UN. It was a collective security and economic organization, and the idea was that we would get everyone together and we would police ourselves. Okay? If Maduro was so bad, why didn't Trump go to the OAS and, as a group, put pressure on him to get rid of him or sanctions? He didn't do that, which obviously again proving that this was not about fighting terrorism, fighting for human rights, or regime change. It was all about Trump and trying to get a deal for Trump.
We're losing you, Ken. You're dropping down off the screen.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
He's slithering away.
I don't know that that's any better now.
Felicia in the chat says, I think Trump is using some of the military bases and ICE as a scapegoat to be part of a human trafficking with the cartels. So much going on in the White House. Did Russia use an ICBM missile on the Ukraine while protests? Yeah, they did. They dropped a 40-ton missile, but that's also in response to the fact that the Ukraine blew up two oil platforms or something, something in Russia. And for some reason, I feel like the U.S. was helping the Ukraine with that one. I'm not sure. For me, I had somebody talk about why didn't they go after Putin, and somebody said on my page, well, Putin's a superpower, and that's why we did. And I'm like, dude, Putin is still at war with the Ukraine, a country that he should have had wiped off the mat 2 weeks in, and he's still getting his. Ukraine will be the blackest eye on Putin's history. Period. He should have never went this long with the Ukraine, and yet here we are. What are we 3 years in now with this Ukraine?
Something like that.
5.
So crazy stuff. Moving on. Next topic. Rob already brought it up. But first we got the House is showing some cracks. So we talked about the Senate limiting powers, the presidential war powers on Venezuela, but then we had 17 GOPs cross the line, and they extended the 3-year extension on the ACA, which people love to refer to as Obamacare, but it extended it. 17 GOP members side with Democrats. It's not a good thing heading into midterms. It's not a good thing to be losing. I watch a lot of C-SPAN. I'm seeing a lot of GOPs flip. My question to you guys that I had off air is, I'm torn, because you see a lot of people say, well, I don't care that they finally flipped and came to their senses. They're still dirtbags for what they did. But part of me's like, yeah, but we need this. We need to change what is going on with this administration. The only way you're going to do it is by having these numbers such as this happen. I get it. A lot of these people are dirtbags for supporting this administration from the get-go, like the MTGs, the Boberts, all these people that are flipping now. I just got to get your opinions on that. Ken, your thoughts? Should we accept it even though these people are... What do you say heading into midterms?
Politics is the art of the possible. And, there's an old joke in Washington. Washington's the only place where you F your friends, you screw your friends and F your enemies, okay? It's what it is. And as much as I think all these people are flipping for the wrong reason, it's important we have these subsidies for many reasons. And sometimes you got to do a deal with the devil. It sucks, but If I quote my grandfather, put your big boy pants on and get it done. Okay? I agree with you. There are cracks in the entire Republican because they know what's coming. I mean, these people aren't stupid. As much as we make fun of them, they're not stupid and they can read polls. Republicans are going. This is going to be a huge red wave in the form of blood. There will be blood on the floor. It will probably be the worst showing for an incumbent party in recent history. I don't think we've seen this, got to be in 30, 40 years. But at the same time, you got to get things done.
Right.
If I may quote Israel Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, when he was making peace with the PLO, he said, "You don't make peace with your friends." So that's my hot take.
Your thoughts on this, Squared? With
Yeah. Look, it's simply they stuck their finger in the sky and saw which way the wind was blowing. This was only about re-election. That's all. They all knew in this big bill that they passed that this was going to happen, and they didn't care. The Democrats said, "Could we just take that out?" No, they wouldn't do it. Right, and then when you had the shutdown, and the Democrats said the only reason the only thing they wanted was to fix the subsidy issue, to make sure that people all of a sudden weren't going to, on January 1st, thousands and thousands and thousands more dollars than they did the day before on their insurance premiums and have to give up their insurance, which was the whole point of the Affordable Care Act, was to get people on insurance, and so they weren't taking public assistance, and so. The Republicans kept saying no, 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 no. They even said, okay, open the government and then we'll do it. And then they still didn't do it. All of a sudden, they started seeing the polls that said these particular representatives were going to lose their reelection bids. I don't even know if they care about what's going to happen with, the overall makeup of the House or the Senate after the 2026 election. But they all knew that they were personally in trouble, and this was about saving their own bacon. Now, I will say this, obviously the devastating effect that this would have on, I think it was 20 or 30 million Americans who were at risk of losing their insurance because they simply couldn't afford it with the new premiums. Clearly, we can't let that happen. That is a catastrophic problem when so many people are, getting off their insurance, because what do you think happens for medical care? They're all going to public hospitals, and we go back to the old days where that was unacceptable. And so that has to change. However, I will say this, to be fair to everybody who's interested in healthcare and all, for the long-term viability of the Affordable Care Act, we have to figure out how to wean the subsidies. This can't be a permanent fix. You can't just abruptly cancel them overnight, which is why this had to happen. But there has to be a 5-10 year plan where we wean these subsidies off. And because if you're going to make people buy insurance, then they're buying insurance. That's the whole problem with the Affordable Care Act, is we shouldn't be making people buy insurance, private insurance, because of the profit margin. We should have done something different. But that's a different argument to be made. I mean, it was a big improvement. We put more people on coverage. That's a great thing. Now we've got to figure out how to maintain it. So there is an issue to be had, but that's the next phase. First, we got to keep people on their insurance until we figure out the long-term strategy.
And for those who don't remember, I think some of the reason why some of these GOP members flipped is because during this break, during the holiday, Trump did this interview on TV, and he was asked about, hey, you ran the whole campaign that you were going to have a health care package for America, make America great again, and we haven't seen it. It's not here. And he come right out and says in the interview, this is what bugs me about this guy, because he lies and then he gets caught, and these reporters are doing a damn good job of checking him. And they're saying, well, you said this. You said you had a plan. It was going to be day one and Obamacare was going by. And he comes right out and says it on the interview. I don't have anything. We're going to have to pull back on that. And we're going to have to. And I think the GOP members were like, wait, whoa, what do you mean? What do you mean? This is, okay, now you're saying you have absolutely nothing. I don't think they ever had anything. I think they ran a whole false narrative on lies and thought, okay, we're going to fake it till we make it. I don't think they ever had a health care plan written up or drawn up or anything of any sort. I think it was all BS from the get-go. And that's just my opinion. And I think when that happened, this interview happened, because he did a lot of interviews where he outed himself, and it's just scary stuff. We're running tight here, but I got to get these in. So now, in the legal booth, to close out the legal booth, Special Counsel Jack Smith will now testify. It's coming. He's testifying this month. And one of the biggest things that he has said, and this quote is being floated around, he is saying, Jack Smith is saying, January 6th, 5 years ago, does not happen without Donald Trump. This solidifies, and we talked about this on this show. I talk about this on this show because we were here on January 5th. We broke it down. We were concerned and we were worried about January 6th on this show before anybody else was worried. We talked about the fact prior to January 6th, we talked about the fact on this show that across the country that MAGA was already testing response infrastructures because we talked about the attack on the City Hall in Detroit. And I forget, we had the other one in Michigan, and we talked about these scary situations, and we talked about, are they gearing up for something? Is this something that this is bigger? Ken said it. Rob, you mentioned these militias on this show. And here we have January 6th, and January 6th happens. And for the longest time, for the last 5 years, this whole thing has been Trump didn't incite anybody. Well, Jack Smith is going to hold his special counsel testify that this does not happen without Trump. I'm going to let Rob, military guy, JAG officer, I'm going to let you go first on this one. Your thoughts on what Jack Smith is about to bring.
I'm just going to say one thing. Read the indictments, look at the testimony. You'll see two things. Number one, in support of Jack Smith's conclusion that January 6th, the insurrection, the attack on the Capitol doesn't happen without Donald Trump. That's as obvious as saying tomorrow is Wednesday. There's nothing, of course it is. Of course it is. He spent the entire time from when he lost the election setting that up and whipping people into a frenzy and creating that, situation. The other thing I would say is, I lost my train of thought here. I was so focused on that one thing, but come back to me. Go ahead, Ken.
Ken, yep.
Yeah, no problem. We talked about this. We talked about this from the election to January 6th. We predicted it, and we were not the only ones. Everybody was predicting it. We heard about the phone call from Donald Trump to the Georgia Board of Elections. I need 120,000 votes. So the idea that this January 6th came out of thin air was totally untrue. And Jack Smith has said that there was enough to go forward with a conspiracy that Donald Trump was responsible for the January 6th. And he said that publicly, okay? And he's right. Because it was these people came to the Capitol at Donald Trump's behest. They admitted it. They said, we came here because Donald Trump told us to come here. They were saying this in real time.
Ken, do you have plastic on your couch or something? Do you have plastic on your couch?
No. I know. Why?
Because you keep sliding down out the shot.
Kidding. Hold on a second.
Oh, me and Rob are sitting there cracking up because you just...
Sorry about that. I'm just trying to get comfortable. It's been a long week. But no, I mean, this is saying, like you said, Rob said, tomorrow is Wednesday. And if we had a functioning judicial system, which we don't, and if we had a functioning Congress, the man would have been impeached, indicted, and in jail now.
Yeah, and so the thing I was going to point out is if you look at the witnesses, where all the evidence comes from and the testimony comes from, they're at least 90%, if not more, Republicans. These are not biased people. These are not Democrats or liberal activists. These are Republicans that Trump appointed into his administration who had the decency and the integrity when they were put under oath to tell the truth. And so, people who want to say, oh, he was this was some kind of, Biden thing. No, first of all, it started under the Trump Department of Justice, and it was his own people, Republicans, people who worked in his administration whose testimony would have sealed his fate had they been able to get this case to trial on time. So I think that's critical.
We're at 8 o'clock. I just want to go through this and just get into the Trump troubles, because some of the stuff we were actually able to talk about in the legal booth. So we're going to get into former ICE director tells people don't rush judgment on shooting. We're going to break this down real quick. I have some questions for these guys. Mayor Frey. I'm not going to show the clip. Everybody's seen the clip already of Mayor Frey having the harsh words for ICE. People, when you see politicians and everybody dropping the F-bomb, this lets you know that we're in a bad place. We're in a bad place. And as R Squid also mentioned, there's the photo from Wikipedia where President Trump updated himself as the acting president of Venezuela, but Rob already touched base on that. It's unprofessional. I see a lot of people out there saying he's trolling. He's the best president we had because he's utilizing. No, it's unprofessional. It's not that a president shouldn't be trolling the public. A president shouldn't be putting false information out because you've got a base that has a mentality that doesn't go past the 5th grade and thinks that everything he does is true or real or is standard. It doesn't go like that. And, you know, this is why we have the things we do. I had an open discussion on oil strategy, Russia and Iran, but we actually pretty covered it. So I just want to get into ICE and this situation real quick in Minnesota, because a lot of people are torn over this. A lot of people are upset about this. The day that it happened, you know, I watched the video, I saw it, and the first thing that popped up on my screen was I saw a police officer go into detail about why this was wrong, and he shared a link, if people need to know, to check it out. There was a former ICE director who I saw with an interview. That very first day, they shared the link to the DHS manual for training for ICE officers and what they're supposed to follow and when do you use deadly force. And the link that I had and where I had it was in this situation involving a vehicle. So the first day we have it, you know, ICE Agent Ross is out there with his camera. He's recording this situation, and we've all seen the videos. We've all watched it. One of the things that I read in this manual is that an officer, an ICE agent, when you're clearing vehicles and you want people to leave, ICE is, you're supposed to, and this is probably the same in the military, you look at the area, and you're supposed to create one exit for the people to leave, for the people to get out of. When you watch this video, ICE did exactly that. They moved up, they cut off the parallel street. They only allowed it so the cars could only go out one way. One of the things in these ICE trainings is that you're not supposed to block the cars or impede the cars in any way from using the single outlet that you created, that ICE created for those people to leave. You're not supposed to block any vehicle. Despite what you want to say, despite what you have, this gentleman was in front of her car when he was supposed to, when he knows he's supposed to let her go. Now, everybody went back and forth for 48 hours over the fact whether he was here or there. He was wrong. Mostly everybody's going to say he was wrong. But then J.D. Vance comes out and adds a whole nother layer of a problem. J.D. Vance comes out and thinks, I'm going to give this guy sympathy. I want people to feel sorry for this guy. And J.D. Vance goes on this whole rant and says, you all are tearing apart a guy who was hit by a car and dragged 5 months ago, got 33 stitches in his leg. He was diagnosed with PTSD. And I said, full stop. You're telling me that you all put a guy back out into the field only 5 months after being in the same situation, clinically diagnosed with PTSD from the incident, and you put him back out in the field with a gun in his hand? I'm sorry, but I hate to say this. If you're a defense attorney and you're Ken and you're representing this guy because the state of Minneapolis said they're already going to charge him, the first thing I'm going to say is, well, hey, I really shouldn't have been back out there. I actually wanted to stay out on comp, but I was forced back to work because I was suffering from PTSD. I feel like this guy could end up being exonerated in this shooting, and this turns over a lawsuit against ICE, Holman, and Christy Nguyen, because they wrongfully put a guy out there that really we don't know yet, but he may not have supposed to have been out there. I'm going to go to Oscar first. You're in the military. If you are in the same situation, you're injured, and I know I've heard this from other veterans, usually when you're clinically diagnosed, guys are scared, soldiers are scared to get that diagnosis of PTSD because they know, shit, I'm going on desk duty. They're not going to trust me until am I correct in this?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously there are degrees of PTSD, right? It's not the same for everybody. So the more serious the case, the more serious the accommodation would have to be. If you have a serious enough case, you get medically retired, not discharged, but retired. So you get your full benefits and what have you. You're not put on the street. So, who knows what level PTSD this guy had. We're assuming he has it. We haven't seen his file. We don't know. You're assuming because of the incident that happened. By the way, he was wrong in that incident, which is how he got injured in the first place. And so, he brought it on himself. So I'm not really that interested in the PTSD issue. It's not a defense. It's mitigating. And so, it just kind of depends. The thing is, you guys will remember this. Months ago on the show and weeks before that on the corridor, I talked about the problem with ICE in this regard. I talked about, number one, that they were not following proper training protocols, that these agents were not being trained. It may be that while we're here saying that according to normal procedure, according to normal training manuals, longstanding law enforcement, that, law enforcement officers, people who go through the training know and are told you do not stand in front of a car, you do not stand behind a car, you do not reach into a car, you do not try to pull a door open from a car. He did all of those things. You don't do that. And so on the one hand, when you watch the video, if you put it all together with the benefit of sitting down patiently, looking at 4 or 5 different video feeds, and looking at slow motion or what have you, you could piece together what happened, which is what we all have the benefit of doing. Under the Supreme Court cases, Tennessee versus Garner, and I'm sorry, the other case slips my mind. I'm sure Ken knows it on the tip of his tongue, where we talk about use of force and escalation. And the way that the court looks at it is you don't look at it through the benefit of 2 weeks of carefully looking at video footage. You look at it from the perspective of the officer. And from the perspective of the officer, maybe he didn't know that she had the wheel turned to the right. Maybe, he knows that the car was moving and he did get bumped. He didn't get run over. I mean, the administration immediately starts lying, right? They said he got run over. He was in the hospital. He was fighting for his life. She tried to kill him. She's a domestic terror. All that stuff was crap, total crap. But he did get bumped by the car. Now, normally you might say under the Supreme Court analysis that could give an argument, at least an argument, not that it has to win, but an argument that he could have been reasonable in believing that he was in danger, of serious injury or death. The problem is you can't use that argument when the officer created the situation by acting improperly. And so by him violating normal procedures, by standing in front of the car, which he was not supposed to do, and by the other agent going in and trying to, reach into the car, which he was not supposed to do, they created the situation that led to him being bumped by the car, which means they can't use that argument about being able to escalate to being in danger and using, potential, deadly force the way they did by shooting at her at point blank range. That's even to say, even if they had that argument, I'm willing to say unequivocally it was a bad shoot. Absolutely, it was a bad shoot. I'm just trying to be fair here and make the arguments that are there. But he can't make that argument. Let me say one other thing. I see Ken's hand up. One last point. What I said on the show a long time ago was that ICE, under this administration, from the minute this administration retook power in January, was filling ICE with who? Who did I say?
Militias.
Militia people.
Right.
And MAGA people. They're not getting police officers. They're not getting people who are interested in upholding the law and public service. They're getting the militia trolls and giving them guns and badges and the authority to act, and they're not giving them the training. A lot of ICE agents, because they've been hiring so quickly, they're getting people who don't have the background checks. They're getting people from right-wing, propaganda sites, media sites, and people who would never otherwise be eligible to be hired for federal agencies or law enforcement agencies at any level, state, local, whatever. And they're also abbreviating the training. They're cutting weeks and weeks off of the training, months even, where they're not even getting the proper training. And so this guy, he may have the ability to sue the Department of Homeland Security, which has certain immunity from suit, but he may have the ability by saying he was put out there without the proper training. That might be his only recourse here. But that has nothing to do with the shooting. This is a bad shoot. Go ahead, Ken. Sorry.
Okay. Couple of things. One of the things we need to understand, and I'm going to go all geek, so break out your pillow. It's going to be a while. There is a difference between general police power and limited police power.
Right.
Okay. General police power is held by the Brockton Police Department, the Boston Police Department, the Springfield Police Department, the Mass State Police. They have the general power to enforce all types of law. Federal agencies, now the trade-off is they're jurisdictionally limited to where they are, the city, the county, the state. You can't find a Mass State Trooper going to California to run drunk driving checkpoints. He has no jurisdiction. Federal officers don't have jurisdictional limits. They can go all within the United States. But they have limited police power, meaning they can only enforce federal law. And in the case of ICE, they're even more limited. They only can enforce immigration law, which means they had no authority to stop that woman. They were acting under color of law. When they did that, it became a kidnapping case. When they attempted to stop her, that's kidnapping under color of law. They have no immunity, which means they cannot use the use of force policy to defend their actions because they had no authority to make the stop. And that's what people don't understand.
You slipped down again, kid. So I got to stop you here because we got.
Let me finish, okay? So when he did that, he was acting as a civilian, which means everything he did from that point on was acting as a civilian, which means they were an attempted kidnapping, and they should all be charged with felony murder. There is no immunity for that. Now, also, there's something called use of force. All departments have them. I can't find ICE's. I find DHS's, where they specifically say, do not step in front of a motor vehicle. Okay? And the reason you don't step in front of a motor vehicle is because they might hit you.
Right.
Cops have an old saying, you can't outrun Motorola. Okay? That's the reason you let them go. Because you get the license plate, we'll just track them down. Now, a couple of years ago in 2014, the Customs and Border Protection had to issue new use of force policies because too many officers were standing in front of cars and escalating the situation instead of de-escalating it. So this guy, even if he believed his life was in danger, he couldn't shoot the person because he was attempting a crime. And that's the problem people don't understand.
So before we get out of here and we get into my outgoing banners for events, I got to ask you, Ken, real quick, to put on your defense attorney suit. And, you're in Minneapolis now. You're operating out of Minneapolis. This guy has charges filed against him for this murder in the state. This guy comes to you and says, hey, Mr. Diesenhof, defense attorney, I need your help. They're about to hit me with a murder charge, but, hey, I wasn't even supposed to be out here. I was supposed to be still out on.
That's not an excuse. No.
That's not an excuse?
No.
You can't...
That's absolutely not an excuse.
Okay.
It's called the voluntary intoxication defense. If you know you aren't supposed to be out there. For example, one of the most common things is people who get drunk and then go out and do stupid stuff and say, well, I was drunk. Mm-hmm. No. If you know that you are mentally deficient
Really?
and you go and choose to do it, that's not
So
an
he can't
excuse.
say they forced me back to
No,
work, blah,
absolutely
blah, blah.
not.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely not. If you know you're mentally deficient and you go out and do it, that's on you. Now, you may have an action against DHS for that, but no, that does not excuse you for going out and doing stuffing when you're mentally disabled.
Because they did Minneapolis is going to, and someone was talking about the camera of the wife. Nobody has seen the video footage from the wife's camera. In my opinion, is I already heard them say that they've got evidence. So I'm going to assume they've got her camera. The prosecutor has got her camera.
I'm sure that. I mean, even if they don't have the camera, the stuff that I saw, it's clear. Everyone should be charged with kidnapping, conspiracy, and felony murder.
Wow.
Because they did not have the authority to stop her. They are not general jurisdiction police officers.
And
they have
like I was saying,
authority.
And like I was saying before we came into this, I read it. I read the procedure for cars and crowds.
Right.
And you create one exit, and it clearly states in the training you are not to block or impede the vehicle's exit. There was a name for it, not exit strategy, but there was a name for that exit. And that was
egress.
You can't. Yes, you can't block it in any way, and they blocked her only exit. And I saw a gentleman share it frame by frame, and that officer Ross, he had his phone in his hand, and then he switches to his firearm hand before she even began to back up. So he already had it in his mind before she was even a threat.
Look,
he already had it in his mind. So go ahead, Ken.
Yeah. If you read use of force policies, and I've read a lot of them, one of the things they tell you is don't fire into a moving vehicle. Okay?
Oh, yes. Could be kids in the car.
Now, there's a very practical reason for this. One, you may cars, despite what we see in the movies, are not bulletproof.
Nope.
Bullets will go through windshields, they'll go through side doors, everything else. So it's very possible if you shoot in a motor vehicle, the bullet will go through the car and hit a fellow officer. That's reason number one. Reason number two, if there are other people in the car, you may hit a passenger.
The wife.
Or reason number three, let's say you hit the person and you disable them. What do you think happens to the car? Does the car automatically stop? No, it's going to continue going.
Well,
so now
we seen what happened. We saw what happened. We're lucky nobody was killed. We were lucky nobody was killed.
Right. That's why you don't shoot into a motor vehicle. That's why you let them go and you chase them down and you box them in and you use the spikes.
Let's be honest here. He could have, when he got bumped by that car when she was trying to get out, he's lucky that his gun didn't misfire and he didn't shoot his partner who was at the door, because that was real close vicinity, right? We could be also talking about the fact that, wow, you shot your own partner because you had your gun drawn. You already fired once. You weren't paying attention.
That's also dealing with, I believe, Rob, I'm going to borrow a term from the military. It's called a busy environment.
Yeah.
Got to be careful if you don't want to. Look, I've always said this about my clients. I said, I'm not worried about them getting angry at me and shooting at me. I'm worried about being on the street.
Let me just back up here. Rob, can you just, for the people in the chat who's watching, just explain busy environment? Because a lot of people don't.
No, it just means that it's the normal chaos that happens. That if you don't, there's too many things happening around you. You don't have the opportunity. Your brain can't process it right, and so there's too high of a risk of basically friendly fire, of hitting the wrong target, an innocent target or your own people or what have you. And that's what this was. As ICE was trying to, all running into the scene, all trying to surround this car, and he's shooting. He could have shot any number of innocent people.
Right.
Now, granted, he shot her in the face point blank. It would have been hard to miss. But at the same time, the bullet could have kept traveling. And of course, the car it becomes a weapon for real once she's shot, because her foot's on the accelerator, and that car could have run into a crowd. It could have run into the officers. So that's what we're talking about.
Now, here's the other thing we need to understand. And this is a point that I really need to drive home with people. You are under no obligation to stop for a police officer with limited jurisdiction. They can't stop you. As a matter of fact, under Commonwealth versus Thibault in Massachusetts, unless a police is doing a Terry stop, has a warrant, or if there's an emergency, if you decide to leave, he can't stop you from leaving. They are not. That's officers with general police power. These people had limited police power, so they can't leave. They can't stop. So anytime these ICE officers say, "Oh, she should have cooperated," no, you have no authority to do that. Okay?
Yeah,
I cannot stress that enough.
If you go into the Department of Homeland Security and you look at under the ICE regulations, they may not even detain U.S. citizens.
Yes.
They only can detain people suspected of immigration violations who are immigrants. And then obviously that's the limited jurisdiction. But if you're an American citizen, and that's why if you notice these protesters all go around saying American citizen, because they've been told that means ICE can't detain them in any way. Right. And that's true. Wow. Now, at the same time, these protesters, look, they don't deserve to be shot for expressing their First Amendment views, regardless of what their opinions are. But at the same time, and Ken will be the first one, he said this on the show numerous times, of course, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you got to follow the law. You got to protest peacefully. You can't obstruct, even if the police are acting. You don't obstruct the police because that never ends well. But that's a different problem. And she wasn't necessarily obstructing. Her wife was being somewhat harassing or what have you. She didn't do anything wrong. But remember, everybody thinks that they're a budding journalist, right? They're the next Dan Rather or something or other. You might have the ability to film with your cell phone cameras, but you have to do so from a reasonable distance. You don't have the right to get in their faces in the middle of a scene. You have to do it from a safe distance. It doesn't mean a mile away, but it may mean 20 feet away. I mean, what's reasonable under the circumstance? And that's the law. So you can't just get in their faces and start filming either. So the protesters, they got to get a little bit of, I'm not blaming any, it's not their fault that, she didn't deserve to get shot or what have you. I'm just saying everybody's got to be smart here.
Yes. When I do legal observer training, I've taken legal observer training, and I do legal observer training. One of the things we always tell people is we call it the reach, lunge, and grab distance. If you're outside of them ability to reach you, lunge at you, or grab you, that's generally safe. Okay? So if they can't physically touch you or use a baton to touch you, you're in a safe distance. That's how far away you should be.
Well, I don't like this being the proper distance away, and they're still shooting you in the face with these smoke bombs.
Oh, I agree. That's exactly why we tell them to do that, because if you're that far away, then we're going to nail their ass to the wall.
And I heard the ACLU is stacking paperwork up like no tomorrow. They're waiting. Yeah. They said the ACLU is ready to go once this administration is out. That's the rumor. I don't know if you're hearing that rumor.
I know. The NLG, the National Lawyers Guild, the American Civil Liberties Union, the National Association of Defense Counsel, trust me, we're already creating the brief bank.
Craziness. All right, we're at 8:26. Let me get this up here, the outro banners for the show. And I'm not sure if they are going to play, but yes, there we go. There's all the shows that are coming up and events. I want to thank everybody for tuning in the show. Mario Lamar is going to be coming on to talk about this. Ride the Bat Bus till June 26. And thank you, everybody, for supporting the show. We got to get ready to get out of here. I'm going to go around the horn and let my guys say their goodbyes. I'm going to start with R Squared up top, upper left-hand side.
Yeah, as always, it's a pleasure to be on, to get to talk about these important issues. I hope people found it helpful. Like we always say, read things for yourselves, read credible sources, read multiple sources, stay informed, and most importantly, stay safe.
Ken?
Want a big shout out and thank you to all of our listeners and viewers, all 12 of you. Happy Second New Year. For those of you who get that joke, we'll explain to you next time. Be warm, be safe, and we'll see you in February.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for tuning in the show. These guys will be back here the first Tuesday of February. We got a long weekend coming up. Martin Luther King Day is coming up on Monday, and I pray nothing stupid is said or nothing as stupid is done on Monday with this administration, because we're already hanging by a thread. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in the show. SpongeBob, if you can, do me a favor, take us home.
See you next Tuesday.
Thank you for listening to The Booth on Hoobazoo and HatcherRadio.com. Please follow the Facebook page and subscribe to the podcast at Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. The Booth is a Sinista1 production hosted by Sinista1.
I've got to start hanging out with friends that are a little more intelligent and understand politics and stuff. It's just that I'm up on this level up here, and all my friends are down here. Me, nah. You guys, nah. Maybe a little more down in here. Screw you guys, I'm going home.
I smoke, I drink, I do my thing. These bitches hating, so you know I got to make it plain. Don't do cocaine with your chick, my main. We stick together, true forever, yeah, you know we bang. I miss those days, which was easy. If only I make it, bitch, don't repeat. Now that I done upgraded, I've been upstate, but y'all think I'm playing. And I got a hit now for these weak assholes who think I ain't slaying. Try me, and I'll probably end up laughing, cause I never back down. I'm that chick with a clean ass whip, I don't need that shit, I got my own now. I get hurt, I get tired of fussing, fighting, guess I gotta crack down. Don't mess with me, cause on everything, I'ma have to bring the whole city out.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Hoobazoo.com.
Enter website.